right, everybody, welcome to What the Flick, installment, I don't know, 4, I think, of What the Flick. Ben Mankiewicz from Turner Classic Movies with you. To my left, Matt Atchity from Rotten Tomatoes. You know he's here because he waved. To my right, the film critic from the Associated Press, Christy Lemire, here for in for Jenk. Jenk is off to London, England, as opposed to London, Ontario. Which I think is lovely also. Christy, welcome. Thanks for joining us. I've seen more screenings with Christy Lemire, I think, than any other film critic.
It's been special, hasn't it?
It has. I have a photo booth up, and I'm staring at myself, which is horrible.
Why would you tell people that?
I don't know.
They already think you're a narcissistic prick. Why would you ever tell anybody that?
To erase all doubt.
Well, I am. I'd like to think I'm not a narcissistic prick.
Right.
I think just...
Prick's a bit strong.
Just go with
narcissist.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I meant that lovingly.
Narcissistic ass.
Okay, ass.
Prick
Sorry.
just seems a little harsh. Okay. 2 movies for you. We'll begin with Green Zone, Paul Greengrass's film with Matt Damon. Well, I will split it up. Christy, what happens in Green Zone?
Matt Damon plays this army dude. And every time he gets sent out on assignment to go find WMDs, they're not there.
In Iraq.
They're not like Sherman Oaks or anything. They're in Iraq. This is 2003. Right. They're in Baghdad, and every assignment he gets to go and find WMDs, they get some great tip. They have this great intel from this Iraqi source, this guy who's been nicknamed Magellan. Every time they go, there's nothing there. And he begins to wonder, what's wrong with our intel? Why are we going on these wild goose chases? And he realizes something is up. But there's also a conspiracy to keep the secret, I don't want to give it away, but keep the secret of what is really happening as far as the intel and the weapons. And it's sort of based on what actually has been going on. And there's also a great deal of wish fulfillment as far as what we would like to see happen as far as exposing all the wrongs the administration did.
Matt, your thoughts?
You know, I might have liked this movie if it didn't make me feel like I was going to throw up. The entire movie is shot with handheld cameras. The entire thing. The entire movie.
A lot of movement.
A lot of movement. And on a big screen, it's way too much. So I will warn anyone who, if you got sick of Blair Witch, you ain't seen nothing yet.
Yeah.
This is really, really obnoxious. You know, I get Paul Greengrass wanting to do kind of the shaky cam, the fast cuts in a fight scene. Now, I personally don't care for that. I don't want to feel like I'm in a fight scene. If I want to feel like I'm in a fight, I'll go pick a fight. I'll get in a fight with someone.
Have you ever been in a fight?
A long time ago. And I don't want to feel like I'm in a fight, so I don't pick fights. This whole movie is shot like a fight scene. Even scenes where 2 people are just in a room talking to each other, it'll be a quick pan and a zoom, or a zoom out and a quick pan, and it's just, it's frantic. And the entire movie doesn't need to be. Now, it's effective in certain spots. At the beginning, when you're kind of supposed to feel like you're on the ground in the early days of the U.S. attack on Baghdad, that's a terrifying sequence. I felt like you really did feel like you were on the ground. That's how it must have felt. You know, you're seeing the sky light up orange at night, and it's really, really intense. But I feel like the rest of the movie, it's just too much for me. Again, I might have enjoyed it more if I felt like I could actually sit through it. I almost walked out on a couple occasions because it was just too much for me.
Really?
And this is his style, though. I mean, if you look at the last 2 Bourne movies, and look at United 93.
He did the last 2.
He did the last 2, and he did United 93. This is very much his style, like the hyperkinetic,
right, and those are my same complaints about the last 2 Bourne movies. It was just too much.
But with those films, and with United 93 especially, a movie about a plane crash, you have a lot of moments of quiet. You have a lot of moments where they let the suspense just build, and that never happens here. And it really could have done with a lot more of that as far as allowing us to immerse ourselves and not feel distracted by the hyper anxiety of it all.
Right.
Yeah. United 93, I think I can safely say, and I try to avoid, boxing myself in. I don't know what number I'll put on it, but I will say that United 93 is one of my favorite movies of the decade. I don't know what the number is. I don't know whether it's 10, 20, or 25. But it would make my NCAA tournament of 2000 movies. Definitely, it gets an at-large bid. I loved that film because there was tremendous, and the great thing was there was so much suspense there, and you know exactly how that film is ending.
Right, and yet you're on the edge of your seat. Like you're waiting, you can't
whole
wait.
Time. I just thought that was an incredible movie. I mean, and aside from the fact that we then, and you realize that that movie is filled with non-actors and real air traffic controllers who experienced September 11th firsthand. I thought it was a remarkable film and really a testament to Paul Greengrass's talents as a director. And I liked all three Bourne movies. But I think, Christy, you make a great point that there was some drama missing from this. And as a guy obsessed with how we went to war, I really liked the first, I made up a number here, like the first 54% of this film. Because it's not what happened, but it's pretty close to a version of what happened.
Well, and it's based on the novel, right? I mean, or not the novel, it's based on the book, about the nonfiction book.
I mean, we didn't have a specific Iraqi general we didn't exactly take a specific piece of intelligence and turn it around upside down and there wasn't one guy who lied and that specific piece of information led us to war. But we cherry-picked intelligence from a variety of sources, and that led us into what happened. And there were, as we see in one of my top 11 movies of 2009, a wonderful film, it's a satire, Armando Iannucci's film In the Loop, which is a sensational movie. It's not the same movie, but if you want to see a movie about how we blundered into war, it's a much better film. We had a bunch of 22-year-olds sort of making political decisions here, but so I liked a lot of it. But then all of a sudden in the back half, it got incredibly simplistic, and it was just this one Iraqi general who said no, and then Greg Kinnear, this Defense Department guy who said no, it's yes. And I'm going to say that he did say they were weapons of mass destruction, and I'm going to tell a Wall Street Journal reporter, and that lie is going to lead us into war, and that was it. It was that simple, case closed. And then I was lost.
Right, it is massively overly simplistic. For such a hugely complicated thing, it's so overly simplistic, and a lot of the characters beyond Matt Damon, Greg Kinnear, Brendan Gleeson as a CIA agent who's on his side, Amy Ryan in a totally small and thankless part as this Wall Street Journal reporter who is used as a pawn. They're all these one-note characters. Totally. Like, they're all the same person the whole way through, and it's such a complicated situation. They never change, though.
Right, and then some of the dialogue that they give these characters, I agree with you, is, it gets really obvious and really ham-fisted, right? The Freddie, the translator, right, who gets lines like, what are you doing here? We need to, one of his later lines is, as if he's speaking for the whole country, is to say, we need to make these decisions for ourselves. Yeah, we need, right? And
Iraqis need to make decisions for Iraq, not Americans.
Exactly.
I mean, if he didn't say that, he certainly could have. And I made a number of predictions to you about what would happen in the movie, all of which were wrong. But the fact is, still the things.
Why would you admit that you were wrong?
I'm an honest guy. Because the things that did happen, though, were still incredibly predictable, even if the things that I specifically predicted were wrong.
But Freddie's role, Freddie's pivotal, a pivotal moment. Right. You picked that.
Everything was incredibly predictable, and it is one of the annoying things because the Bush administration made a number of incredibly horrible decisions. But when you make it this simplistic, it's very easy for people to say, "Oh, look at Hollywood and the crazy liberals saying Bush is blaming everything." No, they were terrible. They made a number of terrible, imbecilic, horrible, wretched decisions where thousands and thousands of people died because of their incompetence and ignorance. But it wasn't this simplistic, and I think it's incredibly regrettable in this film.
And I think that's one of my problems with the movie is that, and we talked last week when we were talking, or a couple weeks ago when we were talking about The Ghost Rider, and how I may have lost my sense of outrage about certain things. I feel like this movie, the fact that they never find any WMDs, that's not really a surprise. And although it's played for tension, you know that they're not going to find anything at any point. You know that there's never going to be any intelligence that there actually are, any real intelligence that they're anywhere. And so I feel like having a director of the stature of Paul Greengrass directing a movie like this is a real missed opportunity for somebody to really come in and make a really cutting point. Right, whereas really it's just kind of...
you knew the outcome where he succeeded in United 93, he did not he did not succeed here.
Yeah, In the Loop is better. Of course, our most recent Best Picture winner, The Hurt Locker, is better. Shot by the same cinematographer as Green Zone, so you do have that sensation of being inside on the ground with these people. It's very claustrophobic and very intense at times. I want to say something about Matt Damon because he is really good in this. We're trashing all the performances for being one note. He's reliable, he's consistent, he's authoritative, and much more so than he was in Invictus, where he got an Oscar nomination and all he was just like stoic.
He was great. And Jason Isaacs, who's always good, is in this and barely unrecognizable.
Used. Yeah, barely.
That's right.
And even then, it's not till the very end and then you run the credits. Oh my God, that was Jason Isaacs.
All right, we'll start with the ratings.
I went low on this. I said 4, partly because I felt like I couldn't watch it. I felt like it was going to make me sick, and whatever points there may have been, I felt like we're really missed out. So I got to go with a 4 for this.
Yeah, I gave it a 4 as well, which surprised me ultimately. But when I walked out of it, I felt like this was a huge missed opportunity. It's a bummer. It's a 4.
A 4 from you also?
Yeah.
Right.
You?
I went a little higher on this. I gave it a 5 because I was riding for that first 56%. I was in the 6.5 range, and then I dropped to like a -4. So I ended up thinking that this was a fairly average film. I gave it a 5. Okay. Yeah, it was in the C range. My hair looks horrible, so I ended up with a 5. My hair gets a 3, so that makes
generous.
So with a 5, I think that pulls our overall. That's my 5, and our overall average comes to a 4.6 for the Green Zone. 4.6, a little below average for the Green Zone. All right, 4.6 for Green Zone. Our second film today, our next film is She's Out of My League. I mean, inconceivable.
With that hair.
Well, with
I mean,
this hair.
anything's possible these days.
With this hair, I guess she is out of my league. Matt, why don't you take us through She's Out of My League?
She's Out of My League is the story of a TSA agent, and he ends up dating a girl. He's getting over a bad relationship. This girl, played by the lovely and beautiful Alice Eve. Alice Eve, who... she is also coming off a bad relationship, and the movie makes a big point of saying that she is a hard 10 on the rating scale of attractiveness, whereas at best, the TSA agent, played by Jay Baruchel, is, what do they say, a 4? 5, which puts her out of his league, and it becomes...
You can't move more than 2 points on the scale.
Right, apparently you can't go up more than 2 points on the scale, and his... worries about that rating make for problems in the relationship. You know, it's can the super geek date the super hottie? You know, it's kind of a, you know, almost the fun kind of crazy romantic comedy, but crass. You know, like it wants to be like Knocked Up. Maybe it's the cheaper knockoff, so to speak.
Knocked Up.
But that, you know, so. Unsurprisingly, you know, it's the romantic comedy. Will love triumph in the end? Who knows?
All right. Yeah. Christy, what did you think?
I didn't hate this. I am so surprised to find myself saying that I actually had a pretty good time in this movie because it's surprisingly funny, a lot of really good lines sprinkled the whole way through. The interplay with Jay Baruchel and his little band of buddies, similar to all Judd Apatow movies where the guys are all tooling on each other. But they get a lot of really great one-liners in. The guy who plays his best friend, T.J. Miller, is hilarious. He's very Seth Rogen-y here. Yeah, it's funny. And one thing I liked about it was that the girl in it is a person, and she has a personality and a past, and she's not just an awesome body, and she is an awesome body, but she's not just that. And yeah, I had a surprisingly good time. This is the kind of movie that if it had come out in the 80s, you would go see it in the theater, and then it would come on cable, and you'd watch it over and over again, and realize, oh, it's not bad. Like Better Off Dead, or like she's just one of the guys, or one of those kinds of movies. It reminded me of that.
Yeah, I get the feeling that, and we were talking about this after the screening last night, that when this does come out on cable and you watch it again, that once you've seen it 2 or 3 times, that there's a good chance you'll like it a lot more. Not you specifically, but one will like it a lot more. And by one, I mean I. And I also had a good time last night. You know, this happened to me with very much so with Meet the Parents, which I liked in the theater. And then by the time I'd seen it 3 times and I realized that I'm quoting it, I was like, wow, apparently I thought Meet the Parents was incredibly funny. And I don't know why I think that so much about it. I mean, I think you're right that I thought this movie was pretty funny. I mean, it's interesting. It's written by Sean Anders and John Morris, and I just looked up Sean Anders, and he also wrote what's coming out, I guess, in a couple of weeks. But he wrote Hot Tub Time Machine,
which looks great.
Yeah, so this, I guess, maybe could be a big year for Hot Tub Time Machine. I think you also make a great point about Alice Eve. Right? Looking at the previews, you sort of think, oh, this is, you know, again, right? She's just going to be this body, this sort of, you know, almost like Christy Brinkley in Vacation, right? But no, she's very much a real character, and not at all sort of symbolic of something. She's just a good-looking girl.
Although I have to say,
with a real past and a real future and real wants and real desires. And, yeah.
Although I have to say, there were some elements in this film that I thought really held it back. You know, I
Like what?
felt like some of the more crass humor in there, and I don't want to make it sound like I'm prudish. I can appreciate, you know, poop jokes as much as anyone else, but you know, the shaving scene I thought might have been a bit much.
Can't give it away.
There it is right there. It's right.
The shaving. There's certain scenes, certain jokes that I felt like just. I felt almost that they didn't really belong in this movie. This movie could have been a lot sweeter and maybe even sharper than it was. There were other elements I also thought that there were hints that this movie could have been a little bit more. You know, there's a scene where Alice Eve is first walking through the security checkpoint when we're first introduced to her character, and you see the reaction of all of the dudes and what somebody may think it's like for a gorgeous woman on a day-to-day basis, that the guys just turn into morons, right? And you know, just the little tricks that they do. And I thought that was a really intelligently written scene. I'd like to see more of that in the whole movie.
Without a single word being said.
Without a single word being said, exactly.
I thought that there was a scene that we saw a quick glimpse of earlier too. There's a scene where they're bowling, where they discuss the rating system, and I made a note of it there. I thought it was an incredibly well-written scene. I mean, that's among the that would rank highly among the best comedy scenes that I've seen in a while. That particular scene in that movie where they explained why you can't, if you're a 5, you can't go out with someone above a 7. If you're a 6, you can't go out with someone above an 8. If you're an 8, you can go out with a 10. But you can't go higher than, you can't be above 2. And that if you're a 5, you get an extra. If you're in a band, you get bumped up to a 6 because you're in a band. Right. You know, and then
and having a terrible car, which would normally penalize you, you get
an extra point because you're in a band, because you're artistic, right?
Exactly.
Because you're in a band,
the artistic exemption.
The artistic exemption for having a bad car. Very funny scene, very clever. I liked a lot of that. I thought all the guys in his group were pretty good. You made note of T.J. Miller, who was sort of his closest friend, who I thought was good, but the good-looking guy in his group, Mike Vogel, I thought he was good too. Again, there were I didn't think there were any cliches in the group, which I thought was interesting. Even the heavy-set guy who's in every commercial that has ever been on TV, I thought he was good and could easily have been if you'll excuse me, the fat guy in the group. And I thought, again, they gave everybody in that group some character.
Yeah, the friends are believable. They're not all misfit schlubs.
Right. They weren't all, you know, the way that, the reason why I liked I Love You Man so much, one of the reasons I liked it was that Jason Segel had some depth. He was never a cliche.
He wasn't just a freak.
He wasn't just a freak. Yeah. And I thought all these friends had a little something. I don't know. And then you go back to Jay Baruchel's family, and they were freakish too, but then they made up for some of the freakishness by being actually funny. So, you know, I like this movie, and I find myself, as the more I talk about it, I apparently like this movie more than I ever thought. I might have to bump my rating up here.
I thought the family was a bit more freakish, though, and almost.
No question they were freakish, but I thought they were. Then they became funny enough to overcome to me that no question they were freakish. I can't argue with that.
Can we just bring it down to reality here for a second, though? It's also massively cliched and predictable.
No,
it's totally stupid.
100%.
I'm with you on. I'm not offended by the crass humor. I just don't need it.
No,
it's unnecessary.
It was totally.
Well, and I felt like it was.
It's like they can't resist themselves.
Right. I felt like this movie could have been something along the lines of, say, a 4 Weddings and a Funeral, right? Which is this really sweet, somewhat, you know, pretty sharp romantic comedy, and then they decided, you know what, we need to go into the toilet humor. We need to go with the really crass humor to appeal to a younger audience, and I don't think it was necessary. I think it was completely unnecessary.
It's almost never necessary.
Right, and I think it was really gratuitous. A lot of those bits.
There were only 2 moments, really, and it wasn't. I mean, it wasn't really toilet. It was shaving. It was.
There were bodily functions too.
It was testicular in nature.
But there are bodily functions too.
There were?
Yeah, I don't want to, give it away.
I think
I want to maintain some mystery here for our viewers.
Give that away.
What?
I don't even remember, to be honest.
See, that's how important it was to
I
the
hate
story.
that normally. But anyway, all right. I thought it was pretty funny. All right, ratings.
I give it a 5.8.
Oh,
shockingly, I gave it a 5.8.
Barely better than average.
I'm giving it an average because I feel like the crassness really holds back. You know, come on. When you've got a giant dog licking up
That's
semen.
I wasn't going to give that away. Spoiler alert! You got to warn people.
You know, I feel like that pulls back what could have been a much more clever script.
It led to a good scene, though, later.
It did lead to a good scene, but I felt it was just, some of it was played for the gross-out slapstick.
Kristen Ritter plays Alice Eve's friend, and this is sacrilege to some. She's hotter than Alice Eve.
Not really.
Yeah, really.
She's all gothy and angry.
I know. He wasn't gothy. I don't like gothy.
I think she's more exotic.
Has black hair and like heavy eyelashes.
I think she's more exotic than Alice Eve.
All right, fine.
Outrageous. I'm giving it a 6 point. Did these guys already give the rating?
So I gave mine a 5, yes.
So we got a 5 there. We got a 5.8. I don't think we got the ratings up, but anyway, who cares? I gave it a 6.5, and I now feel like I've shortchanged it. I don't know. I thought it was very funny. I thought it was funny, and I feel like I should have given it a 7. Also to offset these clowns who she laughed. I was sitting next to her. She laughed. She laughed harder than 5.8.
I admit that I laughed quite
a bit.
I
way
said that
harder
off the
than
top.
5.8, and I'm shaking my finger at you right now.
There's no judgment here.
There's a lot
we
of
don't judge
judgment.
each other
I'm judging
here.
you right now. All right, so that pulls the overall rating of She's Out of My League up to a. Oh, this is exciting. This is exciting. It's got to hit. Oh, it should hit above 6.
Oh, I brought it down single-handedly.
You're the serious critic among us, man.
This is a funny
surprisingly.
movie. You should go see it. That wraps up this edition of What the Flick. We will be here next Friday, except we're taking the week off. We'll be here in 2 weeks. Have a great time at the movies, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Thanks, Christy.
Thanks.